You know those families where everything gets written down somewhere? Not on paper. In the air. In the silence between what's said and what's meant. Sarah Chen's mother kept a ledger like that. Nobody ever saw it, but everybody felt it. Every favor had a price. Every sacrifice got tallied. And somehow, Sarah's column always came up short. Here's the thing about ledgers, though. They only work if everybody agrees on the numbers. Sarah was lacing up her running shoes at 6 in the morning, 3 days before graduation, when her phone buzzed. Her brother Michael. Again. "Sis, you gotta talk to Mom. The investors are asking about the bridge round," and she froze the account. The running shoes had a hole near the left toe. Sarah had been meaning to replace them for 8 months. $58,000, she thought. That's how much was supposed to be in my college account. $58,000. How many pairs of running shoes is that? Michael, I have finals. This is serious. Greenbite could go under. Greenbite. Her brother's startup. The app that was supposed to revolutionize something. Food delivery? Fitness tracking? Sarah couldn't remember anymore. What she remembered was sitting at the kitchen table 3 years ago, her mother sliding a cup of tea across to her like a peace offering that wasn't. "Look, your brother has a real opportunity here," Linda Chen had said. "You're going to a state school anyway. The tuition's reasonable. We'll figure it out." Reasonable. Figure it out. Those were Linda's words for stop asking questions. Sarah had been 18 then. She'd gotten into Northwestern. Full ride wasn't quite full. The gap was $58,000 over 4 years. Her grandmother Margaret had set up an education trust. For Sarah's future, the paperwork said. Signed, sealed, delivered. But Linda was the trustee. "I'll call her later," Sarah told Michael, and hung up. She went for her run. Past the Johnsons' house, where their dog barked at the same time every morning. Past the church where her mother volunteered at the bake sale and told everyone how proud she was of both her children. Past the coffee shop where Sarah worked 20 hours a week to cover what scholarships and loans didn't. Equal pride. That was the story Linda told the world. Her son, the entrepreneur. Her daughter, the one who'd be fine. Sarah was always going to be fine. That was the problem. When you're always going to be fine, nobody feels bad about taking from you. The graduation invitation sat on Sarah's dresser. She'd mailed one to her parents, one to Michael, one to her father's sister in Ohio who probably wouldn't come. She'd mailed one to Dean Arthur Patterson, not because they were close, but because he'd sent her a handwritten note her freshman year. "Your grandmother Margaret was one of the finest people I ever knew. If you need anything, my door is open." Sarah had never knocked on that door. She wasn't sure why. Maybe because asking for help felt like admitting the ledger was real. She didn't know then that Dean Patterson had been waiting. Not for her to knock. For the right moment. Graduation day was hot. The kind of Midwestern summer heat that makes your gown stick to your skin and your cap slide forward no matter how many bobby pins you use. Sarah stood with 200 other graduates, scanning the folding chair set up on the main lawn. Her father was there, fanning himself with the program. Tom Chen looked smaller these days, like retirement had shrunk him somehow. He'd spent 32 years sorting mail at the downtown post office, and now he spent his afternoons trying to fix a lawnmower that hadn't started since 2019. Sarah loved him, but she'd stopped expecting him to speak up a long time ago. Next to him, Linda Chen was adjusting her sunglasses and checking her phone. Probably answering emails. Or checking Michael's company Twitter. Or both. She'd worn a navy blue dress, the one she called her proud mother outfit. And there was Michael. He'd come. Late, probably. He was scrolling on his phone, his leg bouncing the way it did when he was anxious. Greenbite was struggling. Sarah knew that from his texts, his calls, The way their mother had started asking about her post-graduation plans with a little too much intensity. Like she was calculating something. Sarah found a spot on the grass and sat with her classmates. The ceremony was starting. Speeches. Awards. The usual. Then Dean Patterson stood up. He was 70 years old, tall, with white hair and the kind of posture that came from a lifetime of standing in front of students and refusing to slouch. He adjusted the microphone, and his voice carried across the lawn. Before we proceed to the conferring of degrees, I have one piece of unfinished business. Sarah felt her throat tighten. 22 years ago, a woman named Margaret Chen asked me to do something. She was a friend. We played bridge every Thursday at the community center. And one afternoon, about 6 months before she passed, she handed me an envelope. She said, "Arthur, keep this. My granddaughter Sarah will graduate one day. Whether I'm there or not, make sure this gets read at her graduation." Linda stopped checking her phone. Tom stopped fanning himself. Michael's leg stopped bouncing. "Sarah Chen," Dean Patterson said, looking directly at her. "Would you please come forward? I believe this is yours." Sarah stood. 200 heads turned. Her gown was too hot. The grass was uneven under her borrowed heels. She walked past rows of families, past professors, past the podium where 3 students had just given speeches about the future. She climbed the 3 wooden steps to the stage. Dean Patterson handed her a yellowed envelope. "Read it aloud, Sarah. Your grandmother wanted everyone to hear." The envelope was sealed with wax, the old-fashioned kind. Sarah's hands were shaking so badly she could barely open it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded 3 times. Sarah looked at her family. Her mother's face was pale. Her father wouldn't meet her eyes. Michael was gripping the armrests of his chair like he was about to be sick. She unfolded the paper, and she read. "To my son Tom, my daughter-in-law Linda, and my grandson Michael, if you are hearing this, it means Sarah has completed her education. I hope it also means you found a way to pay for it yourselves, because I have a feeling you didn't use the money I left for her. I know you, Linda. I've watched you for 30 years. You love Michael with your whole heart, but you've never quite figured out what to do with Sarah. When she was quiet, you called her difficult. When she asked for things, you called her demanding. When she stopped asking, you called her ungrateful. I saw this, and I said nothing, and that is a regret I carry. So I'm saying it now, and I'm asking Arthur to make sure you hear it. Because Arthur's a good man, and he keeps his promises. The education trust one established was for Sarah. Exclusively. If you used a single cent of that money for anything else, Michael's business, your own expenses, a new car, whatever you told yourselves was for the family, then you need to know this. You didn't borrow from Sarah's future. You stole it. Stealing is a strong word, I know. You'll say it's not fair. You'll say the family needed to make choices. You'll say Sarah could go to a cheaper school. You'll say Michael deserved a chance. You'll say a lot of things, because you've always been good at talking, Linda. But the money was Sarah's. It was never yours to redirect. I'm not writing this from anger. I'm writing it from clarity. The clarity that comes when you know you don't have much time left. And I want Sarah to know, wherever she is, whatever she's done with her life, that someone saw her. Someone knew she deserved more than the leftovers of your attention. Sarah, if you're reading this, here is the truth I should have told you when I was alive: you are not difficult. You are not demanding. You are not a problem to be managed until your brother's needs are met. You are my granddaughter, and I loved you enough to plan for you. Even if those plans were ignored. To the rest of you, this is your receipt. I don't know what you'll do with it. Maybe it's too late for things to change. But at least now Sarah has proof. Her education was paid for. Her future wasn't an afterthought. It was a priority, even if it was never yours. With love and a fair amount of disappointment, Margaret Chen the lawn was silent. 200 graduates. 200 families. Professors, deans, staff. Somewhere, a bird was singing, completely indifferent to what had just happened. Sarah refolded the letter. She took her time. 3 folds, like her grandmother had done. Each crease pressed carefully with her thumb. She looked at her family. Tom was crying. Quiet, old man tears that tracked down his face without any attempt to hide them. He'd known. Of course he'd known. Michael was staring at the ground. His phone had fallen into the grass. He wasn't reaching for it. And Linda was standing up. She was standing up in the middle of the graduation ceremony, her navy blue proud mother dress suddenly looking like a costume she'd forgotten to take off. Her mouth was open. Her sunglasses had been pushed up into her hair. Her eyes were wild with something Sarah had never seen before. Not guilt. Not yet. Humiliation. Every parent, every professor, every student on that lawn had just heard Margaret Chen's letter. And every single one of them understood exactly what it meant. The family that looked so perfect from the outside. The successful son. The dutiful daughter. All of it built on $58,000 that had never belonged to them. Sarah walked down the wooden steps. She didn't look at her family. She didn't cry. She just walked, past the rows of folding chairs, past her classmates, past the podium, all the way to the edge of the lawn. She kept walking until the applause started. At first just a few people. Then more. Then almost everyone who wasn't a Chen was clapping. Her phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Sarah, please. Let me explain. Another buzz. Your mother is very upset. Can you come back? People are staring. That was her father. Sarah turned off her phone. She still had the envelope. She still had the letter. She had a diploma waiting for her somewhere in the chaos. But more than any of that, she had something she'd lost 3 years ago at a kitchen table, watching her mother pour tea and tell her it would all work out. She had her grandmother's voice. And for the first time in her life, Sarah Chen realized the ledger her mother kept wasn't the only one that mattered. Some debts aren't money. Some receipts come from the grave. And some collections, well, some collections only need one moment, one letter, and one granddaughter brave enough to read it out loud. She didn't go back to the auditorium. Sarah walked across the campus lawn, past the old oak tree where kids took graduation photos, past the library where she'd spent so many nights she could draw the cracks in the ceiling from memory. She walked until she reached the bench by the duck pond. The same bench where she'd sat 3 years ago, right after that kitchen table conversation, and wondered if she was crazy for feeling like something had been stolen from her. She wasn't crazy. She read the letter again. Not for information, she'd memorized it the first time, but for the feel of her grandmother's handwriting. Margaret Chen had written it in blue ink, the letter slightly slanted, the way she'd written everything. Shopping lists. Birthday cards. The recipe for apple pie that Sarah still had taped to her fridge. My son will mean well, the letter said. He always does. But my daughter-in-law Linda keeps a different kind of books. She'll call it a family decision. She'll make it sound reasonable. Tom won't stop her. He never does. Grandma had known. Sarah pictured her grandmother, sitting in her small apartment with the Afghan blanket on the couch and the bridge cards on the coffee table, writing this letter. Knowing she was dying. Knowing her money, the money she'd saved from 40 years as a school nurse, would be used for the wrong grandchild. And instead of fighting from the grave, she'd found a way to speak from it. Trust Arthur, the letter ended. He's a terrible bridge player but an excellent friend. He'll know when the time is right. I was never a terrible bridge player. Sarah looked up. Dean Patterson was walking toward her, holding his cap in his hands, the tassel dragging on the grass. He looked tired but satisfied, like a man who'd been holding his breath for 22 years and had finally let it out. Margaret was the terrible one, he said, sitting down on the other end of the bench. She always overbid her hand. But she'd smile that smile of hers, and somehow she'd make the contract anyway. Drove the other ladies at the club absolutely crazy. Sarah tried to smile. It came out more like a grimace. You knew. This whole time. I knew she gave me a letter to open at your graduation. I didn't know what was in it. He paused. I suspected. Margaret talked about you. Always. Every bridge game. Sarah's going to do great things, Arthur. Sarah's going to change the world. She never talked about Michael that way. Not once. Sarah folded the letter carefully, put it back in the envelope. My mother's going to be furious. I imagine she's already there. Dean Patterson looked out at the duck pond. A mallard was teaching her ducklings to dabble. Your father came looking for you. I told him I'd find you first. Did you? I thought you might want a few minutes. Before the storm. The storm, as it turned out, didn't wait for permission. Sarah heard the footsteps before she saw the source, high heels on the brick path, a sound she'd associated with maternal disappointment since childhood. Linda Chin appeared around the bend, her makeup smeared, her face a battlefield between rage and humiliation. Behind her, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else, came Tom. And behind Tom, phone in hand but not looking at it, came Michael. Sarah. Linda stopped 10 feet from the bench, like she needed the distance to aim properly. We need to talk. Inside. Now. I'm fine here. I said now. And I said I'm fine here. Sarah's voice was calm. She was surprised by how calm. Dean Patterson, would you mind staying? I'd like a witness. There's no need for a witness, Linda snapped. This is family business. That's what you said when you took my college fund. Sarah stood up. She wasn't taller than her mother, but something had shifted. She wasn't the daughter asking permission anymore. She was the woman holding the receipt. You said, this is a family decision, Sarah, we all have to sacrifice. Remember that? I was sitting at the kitchen table. You poured tea. Like we were discussing a vacation. Linda's face tightened. You're twisting things. We never said you couldn't go to college. You said you'd help me figure something out. Then you gave Michael $58,000. For his company. For a future that would benefit all of us. Michael stepped forward. He had the decency to look uncomfortable, at least. Sarah, look, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know it was your money. Mom said it was from Dad's retirement. You didn't ask. Sarah looked at him. Really looked at him. The brother who'd taught her to ride a bike. The brother who'd scared off her terrible prom date. The brother who'd accepted a check for $58,000 and never once wondered where it came from. You never asked, Michael. Because you didn't want to know. You thought it was normal. You thought everything was normal. Because it always worked out for you. It always worked out for you, and you never had to think about who was paying for it. That's not fair. No. It's not. Sarah turned back to her mother. Grandma knew. 22 years ago, she knew you'd do this. She wrote it down. She gave the letter to Dean Patterson because she knew if she gave it to you, you'd destroy it. Or twist it. Or call it a family decision. Linda snatched the envelope from Sarah's hand. She pulled out the letter, read it, and for a moment, just a moment, Sarah saw something crack in her mother's face. Not guilt. Guilt would require acknowledging she'd done something wrong. This was something else. Panic, maybe. The panic of an accountant who just found out her books didn't balance. This doesn't prove anything, Linda said. Her voice was quieter now. Tight. This is Margaret's opinion. It's not legal. It's the truth, Tom said. Everyone turned. Tom was still standing behind his wife, His hands in the pockets of his suit jacket, the same jacket he'd worn to every wedding and funeral for 20 years. He wasn't looking at anyone. He was looking at the ground, at the grass, at the duck pond, anywhere but faces. Tom. Linda's voice carried a warning. Don't. It was her money, Lynn. Tom's voice was barely above a whisper. Mom set it up for Sarah. I knew. And I let you. I did what was best for this family. You did what was best for Michael. Tom looked up then, and Sarah saw something she'd never seen in her father's eyes. Shame. That's not the same thing. It was never the same thing. Michael was staring at his father. Dad, what are you saying? I'm saying your mother and I stole from your sister. Tom took a breath. The words seemed to cost him something physical. We convinced ourselves it was a loan. That Greenbite would take off, and we'd pay it back before Sarah graduated. And then the company didn't take off. And we didn't pay it back. And we just stopped talking about it. You lied, Michael said. You told me it was your retirement fund. We lied. Tom nodded. To you. To Sarah. To ourselves. Sarah felt the world tilt slightly. All those years of silence at the dinner table. All those times her father had looked away while her mother lectured her about gratitude and sacrifice. She'd thought he didn't care. She'd thought he didn't notice. But he'd known. He'd known, and he'd said nothing. You knew, she said. For 3 years. You watched me work double shifts at the diner. You watched me take out loans. You watched me cry at Christmas because I couldn't afford presents. And you said nothing. I was ashamed. Ashamed doesn't pay my student loans. Sarah's voice cracked. Ashamed doesn't give me back the 3 years I spent thinking I was the problem. Thinking I was selfish for wanting what I'd been promised. Thinking I was crazy. You're not crazy. Tom finally looked at her. You've never been crazy. You've just been invisible. To us. To your mother. To me. We made you invisible so we wouldn't have to look at what we'd done. Linda was shaking her head. No. No, we are not doing this. We are not standing here in front of the dean and tearing this family apart over money. It's not about money, Sarah said. It was never about money. It's about the fact that you kept a ledger, Mom. Every birthday gift, every school trip, every pair of shoes, you kept track. You made sure I knew exactly how much I owed you. But you never once wrote down what you took from me. You just erased it. Like it never existed. Families don't keep score, you do. Sarah took the letter back. You do, Mom. You've been keeping score my whole life. Grandma just returned the favor. Michael stepped forward. His face was pale. Sarah, I'll pay you back. I'll find a way. Investors, a loan, whatever, I'll get you the money. With what? Greenbite's losing money. You told me that yourself, at Christmas. You said you needed another 6 months. That was 18 months ago. Michael flinched. I'm working on it. You're always working on it. Sarah's voice softened. Not with forgiveness, she wasn't there yet, but with exhaustion. That's the problem, Michael. You've been working on it your whole life. And Mom and Dad have been covering for you. And somewhere along the way, I became part of the cover. Dean Patterson cleared his throat. Everyone had forgotten he was there. I don't mean to intrude. But Margaret's letter, it's not the only document she left. Linda's head snapped around. What? Margaret established the trust through the university's foundation. There are legal records. She was very thorough. She anticipated that this conversation might happen. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. This is a copy of the original trust document. The original is with the foundation's legal office. It clearly states the funds were designated for Sarah Margaret Chen's post-secondary education, and that any other use would constitute a breach of fiduciary duty. Linda stared at the folder like it was a snake. You're threatening legal action. I'm not threatening anything. I'm informing you of the facts. What you do with them is your business. What Sarah does with them is hers. Sarah took the folder. It was heavier than it looked. Or maybe that was just the weight of what it represented. Evidence. Proof. The kind of thing her mother couldn't argue away with a cup of tea and a lecture about family loyalty. I need some time, Sarah said. To think. Take all the time you need. Dean Patterson stood up. Margaret would have wanted you to make your own decision. She always said the worst thing you can do to someone is decide what they deserve without asking them. He walked away, back toward the auditorium, leaving the four of them standing by the duck pond. The mallard and her ducklings had moved on. The sun was getting lower, throwing long shadows across the grass. I'm sorry, Tom said. I'm sorry, and I know that doesn't fix anything. But I want you to know, when you decide what you want to do, I'll support it. Whatever it is. Even if, he glanced at Linda. Even if it's hard. Linda didn't say anything. She was staring at the folder in Sarah's hands, probably calculating. Probably trying to figure out how to spin this, how to take control, how to make herself the victim. Sarah could see the gears turning behind her eyes. But for once, Linda Chen had nothing to say. Michael was texting. Sarah didn't know who or why. Maybe his investors. Maybe his girlfriend. Maybe just someone who would tell him this wasn't his fault. There was always someone willing to tell Michael it wasn't his fault. Sarah looked at the three of them. Her mother, the accountant who'd cooked the books. Her father, the silent partner in the crime. Her brother, the beneficiary who'd never bothered to check the receipts. She'd spent 22 years trying to make them proud. Trying to be good. Trying to be worthy of a place at their table. And it turned out the table was a shell game. The place had been bought with her own money. The family she'd been trying to join had stolen her ticket and sold it to the highest bidder. I'm going to find my diploma, she said. And then I'm going to go home, my home, the apartment I paid for with diner tips and student loans, and I'm going to think about whether I still have a family, or whether I just had a group of people who were really good at making me feel like I owed them something. She walked away from the duck pond, the folder in one hand, the letter in the other. Behind her, she heard her mother start to speak. Tom, you can't seriously be, not now, Lynn. Michael, say something. I don't know what to say. Sarah kept walking. The path curved around the library, past the old oak, toward the parking lot. She could see her car in the distance, the old Honda with the cracked side mirror she'd been meaning to fix for 2 years. Her graduation robe was still on. She'd forgotten to give it back, probably. Or maybe she didn't want to. Maybe she'd earned the right to keep it. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Miss Chen, this is Rebecca Torres from the State Bar Association. Dean Patterson asked me to contact you. If you're interested in discussing your legal options regarding the trust, please call me at your convenience. No pressure. We just want you to know you have them. Sarah stared at the message for a long time. Then she put the phone in her pocket, got in her car, and drove home to think about what kind of person she wanted to be. The kind who forgives and moves on, letting the ledger stay unbalanced. Or the kind who makes sure every debt gets paid. Her grandmother had known the answer 22 years ago. She'd written it in blue ink, in a letter, and trusted a terrible bridge player to deliver it. Now it was Sarah's turn to figure out the rest. It took Sarah 6 days to call Rebecca Torres. Not because she was scared. Not because she was uncertain. But because she needed to sit with something her grandmother had written. A single line in that letter that everyone had overlooked in the drama of the moment. And if they try to tell you it was for the family, remember, you are the family. Not the ledger. Not the lies. You. Sarah read that line 47 times over those 6 days. She sat in her apartment, a cramped studio above a dry cleaners that smelled like chemicals and clean cotton, and she let it sink in. Her grandmother hadn't written that letter to punish Linda and Tom. She'd written it to liberate Sarah. To give her permission to stop being the deposit everyone withdrew from. On Tuesday morning, she called Rebecca Torres. They met at a coffee shop near the university. Rebecca was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a no-nonsense clip. She ordered black coffee and didn't waste time. Dean Patterson sent me copies of the trust documents, she said, setting a folder on the table. I've reviewed everything. Sarah, this isn't a gray area. Your grandmother established a Section 529 education trust with you as the designated beneficiary. Your mother was named trustee. That means she had a fiduciary duty, a legal obligation, to use those funds exclusively for your education expenses. Sarah wrapped her hands around her tea. She used them for my brother's company. I know. I read the letter. Rebecca's tone was matter-of-fact, but not cold. Here's what you need to understand. As trustee, your mother was required to keep records, to act in your best interest, and to never, ever use the money for her own benefit or the benefit of another child. What she did is called misappropriation of trust assets. It's a breach of fiduciary duty. And yes, it's actionable. Actionable. Sarah let the word hang there. You mean I can sue them? You can. I want to be clear about what that means, though. This isn't about putting anyone in jail. We're talking civil court. You'd be seeking restitution, the return of the $58,000, plus any appreciation the trust would have earned, and potentially damages. Given the circumstances, a judge might also award legal fees. Sarah looked out the window. A mother was pushing a stroller past the coffee shop, laughing at something her toddler said. Normal family. Normal day. What would it do to them? She asked quietly. Rebecca hesitated. Financially? I'd need to look deeper into their assets. But a judgment of this kind, it follows people. Liens on property. Garnished wages. It's not subtle. And my brother's company? If any of the trust funds can be traced into that business, we could potentially go after those assets too. But Sarah. Rebecca leaned forward. You need to be prepared for what this does to your relationships. Winning in court doesn't always feel like winning at the dinner table. Sarah almost laughed. What dinner table? She went home and called her father. Tom answered on the second ring, like he'd been sitting by the phone. Sarah. I was hoping you'd call. I talked to a lawyer. Silence. Then a long exhale. Okay. She says what Mom did was illegal. Not just wrong. Illegal. Breach of fiduciary duty. I can sue for the money back. Tom was quiet for a long moment. In the background, Sarah could hear the television, some old western, gunshots and galloping horses. She imagined him in his recliner, the one with the duct tape on the armrest, staring at the screen without seeing it. I know, he said finally. I've known for a while. Your grandmother, when she set it up, she tried to explain it to me. Told me it was for you, only for you. I didn't want to listen. I told myself it was all family money in the end. What did it matter whose name was on it? But it did matter. Yeah. His voice cracked. It mattered the first time you came home from college and I saw you'd lost weight because you were skipping meals to save money. It mattered when you told us you were working 3 jobs and Linda said that builds character. It mattered every single day and I just let it happen. Sarah felt tears burning behind her eyes. She didn't let them fall. Dad, I need to know something. Did you think I'd never find out? I think. He stopped. Started again. I think I hoped you wouldn't. I think I hoped Michael's company would take off and we'd put the money back before you ever knew. But hope isn't the same as doing the right thing. I know that now. What do you think I should do? He didn't answer right away. She heard him shift in his chair. The TV went silent, he'd muted it. I think, he said slowly, that your grandmother trusted you to make the right decision. And I think she trusted me to support it. So whatever you decide, Sarah, I'm with you. If you need me to testify, I will. If you need me to stay out of it, I'll do that too. I've been a coward for 22 years. I'm not going to be one anymore. That night, Michael showed up at her apartment. Sarah opened the door to find him standing in the hallway, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. His usually carefully styled hair was flat. His expensive jacket was wrinkled. He held a six-pack of beer like a peace offering. Can I come in? She stepped aside. They sat on her second-hand couch, the one she'd bought for $40 at a garage sale. Michael twisted a beer bottle in his hands, not drinking. I didn't know, he said. Mom told you it was Dad's retirement money. Yeah. He rubbed his face. And I didn't ask any questions because I didn't want to know. That's not the same as being innocent, is it? Sarah shook her head. No. It's not. I've been going over everything. The numbers. The timeline. The money came in right when we were about to miss payroll. I remember Mom saying, "Don't worry, I found a way." I didn't ask how. I just took the check and paid my employees. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I was so proud of myself. CEO making tough decisions. Keeping the dream alive. Whose dream? He met her eyes. Mine. Just mine. I convinced myself it was for the family, for the future, that you'd understand. But you were eating ramen and working night shifts, and I was posting on LinkedIn about hustle culture. Sarah didn't argue. She just waited. I want to make it right, Michael said. The company's not worth much, but I'm selling my shares. I've got some equity, some personal savings. I can't give you $58,000 tomorrow, but I can start. Why now? Because I read the letter. The whole thing. Grandma Margaret said something that I can't stop thinking about. She wrote, Michael will be the hardest to reach, because he's been given the gift of never having to see the cost of his dreams. He looked down at his hands. She saw me. She saw exactly what I was. And I don't want to be that person anymore. The graduation ceremony had been on a Saturday. On the following Sunday, 2 weeks later, Sarah went to her parents' house. She hadn't called ahead. She didn't want Linda to have time to prepare her defenses, to arrange her face, to line up her arguments like soldiers. Tom was in the backyard, still fussing with that broken lawnmower. He looked up when he saw her, and something in his expression shifted, not fear, but a kind of quiet readiness. She's in the kitchen, he said. Sarah found her mother at the table, surrounded by papers. Tax forms. Bank statements. A calculator. Linda looked smaller than Sarah remembered, as if the exposure had physically diminished her. I'm doing the accounting, Linda said without looking up. Your father insisted. We're figuring out exactly how much was taken. Every penny. With interest. Sarah sat down across from her. Why? Linda's pen stopped moving. Because it's what Margaret would have wanted. Don't. Sarah's voice was quiet but firm. Don't use Grandma to avoid answering me. Why are you doing this? Linda finally looked up, and Sarah saw something she'd never seen in her mother's eyes before. Not defiance. Not manipulation. Fear. Pure, undiluted fear. Because I don't want to lose you. The words hung in the air between them. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, Linda continued, her voice trembling. I know I did something terrible. I told myself it wasn't stealing because it was for Michael, for the family. I told myself you were strong, you'd be fine, you'd find a way. I told myself 100 lies so I could sleep at night. But I couldn't sleep, Sarah. I never slept. Sarah remembered all those mornings growing up, finding her mother already in the kitchen at 5 a.m., coffee cold, eyes distant. She'd thought it was just her personality. Now she wondered. "The lawyer says I can sue," Sarah said. "She says I'd probably win. I could take this house." "Your savings?" "Everything." Linda nodded slowly. "I know. I've been expecting it. But I'm not going to." Linda blinked. "What?" Sarah reached into her bag and pulled out a document. It was a promissory note, drafted by Rebecca Torres. It outlined a repayment plan. Michael would contribute 40% of his income from his new job, Linda and Tom would make monthly payments from their retirement funds, and the total sum, with modest interest, would be repaid over the next 10 years. No court. No liens. Just a promise. "This is what I want," Sarah said. "No more hiding. No more excuses. Every month, a payment. Every month, an acknowledgement of what happened. And if you miss a single payment, the legal option is still on the table." Linda stared at the paper. Her hands were shaking. "You're not the accountant in this family anymore," Sarah said quietly. "I am. I decide what debt is owed. And I decide when it's paid." Linda began to cry. Not the theatrical tears Sarah had seen her use before, real ones, ugly ones, tears from somewhere deep and broken. "I'm sorry," Linda whispered. "I'm so sorry." Sarah didn't say it was okay. It wasn't okay. It might never be okay. But she said, "I know." She stood up and walked to the back door. In the yard, her father had finally given up on the lawnmower. He was just standing there, looking at the sky. She stepped outside and stood next to him. "She's crying," Sarah said. "Good," Tom said. "She's needed to for 22 years. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Tom reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. It was old, yellowed, with Sarah's name written in blue ink. Her grandmother's handwriting. "This was in her safety deposit box," he said. "The bank called me last week. I don't know what it says. I figured you should open it." Sarah took the envelope. Her hands were steady. "Dad?" "Yeah? Thank you for finally telling the truth." He nodded, not trusting his voice. She opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a photograph. The photo was of her grandmother and her, when Sarah was maybe 6 years old. They were in the backyard of this very house, and Margaret was teaching Sarah how to plant marigolds. Both of them had dirt on their hands. Both of them were laughing. The letter was short. "My dear Sarah, if you're reading this, it means the time has come. I hope Arthur did his job. I hope you're not too angry at your parents, they're small people, and small people do small things. But you are not small. You never were. The money was always yours. But what I really wanted to give you was something else. The knowledge that someone saw you. Someone knew your worth was not a line item in a budget. Someone believed you deserved better than to be the cost of someone else's dream. Go live your life now. Not the one they planned for you, but the one you choose. And if you choose to forgive them, do it because it frees you, not because they deserve it. All my love, always, Grandma Margaret. P.S. Arthur is terrible at bridge. Don't ever play cards with him." Sarah laughed, and cried, and held the photograph to her chest. Some debts aren't money. Some receipts come from the grave. And some ledgers, the most important ones, can only be balanced by the living. 6 months later, Sarah started graduate school. She paid for it herself, with a combination of scholarships she'd earned and the first year of repayments from her family. Michael got a regular job, not a startup, not a dream, just honest work with a steady paycheck. He showed up every month with a check and an apology. After a while, the apologies became conversations. After a while longer, the conversations became something like a real sibling relationship. Tom sold the broken lawnmower and bought a new one. He mowed the lawn every Saturday and called Sarah every Sunday. Their calls were short and simple, but they happened. Every week. Without fail. Linda continued the payments and joined a support group for, as she put it, mothers who messed up. She never fully explained that to Sarah, and Sarah never asked. But she noticed her mother's voice was softer now. Less calculating. More human. Dean Patterson retired and moved to Florida. He sent Sarah a Christmas card every year with a handwritten note that always ended with the same postscript, "Your grandmother would be proud." And Sarah learned to run again. Not away from anything, but toward herself. She bought new running shoes, the kind she'd denied herself for years. They were bright blue, impractical, and perfect. She ran 3 times a week, past the coffee shop where she'd met Rebecca, past the university, past the house she grew up in but no longer called home. Every step was a payment. Every breath was a receipt. And somewhere, Sarah liked to imagine, her grandmother was keeping score, not on a ledger, but in marigolds, planted in some celestial garden, blooming one by one as the debts were paid and the love, finally, began to grow.